much for coming today. It is my great pleasure to introduce this brown bag. As you all know, we went on a 310 trip over winter break, and Allison and Johnny are going to be telling you all about it and elaborating on the geology that we learned about while we were there. So give it up for Allison and Johnny.
Oh. Hi everyone, I'm Johnny.
I'm Allison.
And today we'll be sharing the geology of West Texas with you that we had the privilege of surrounding ourselves with over the course of our 310 trip over winter break. The 310 trips are an important part of the geology department, and it's a really good opportunity for anyone who hasn't taken one to really get the field experience and the hands-on part of geology under your belt. So going along with the hands-on part, we do have some hand samples that we brought from a portion of the trip that we'll be passing around.
And more about how we prepared for the trip. We met once a week last semester, every week, and we had like good discussions about border issues like ICE, border patrol, and like trafficking, things like that. We went through the formations, so we all have those down for when we got to the trip, and we each were given a specific geologic feature to become an expert on. So when we were in the field, at least one person knew what they were talking about and could share that information with everyone else. And just to orient you guys, this is kind of the main area we were in. We all flew into El Paso, and throughout the trip, we migrated down to Van Horn and then eventually into Big Bend right down here. And we also traveled to Marathon and Terlingua while we were there.
So pictured here are the sister cities, El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. They are divided by the Rio Grande. The geology of this area plays a really large role in the life of the people who live in these two cities. The most important that I think is the role that the bolsons play. So the Bocceus and the Hueco bolsons, they flank the Franklin Mountains, both of which were formed as grabens or half grabens. So these large basins that were filled up over time with sediment, creating these aquifer, like really good aquifers. So that's their source of water. And so displayed now is a geologic cross-section of El Paso, or an idealized version of one at least. And so we see a variety of rock types present. The one that I want to point out in particular is the Kastner marble, which is being passed around now. Is a limey claystone, limestone that was slightly metamorphosed into the marble that you see now. It actually dates to 1.2 to 1.4 billion years old. So that's the oldest rock that we saw on the trip. We'll be taking you through the trip pretty much day by day. And so our first day we spent entirely in El Paso. And so we got to see the Anapra sandstone. That was our first stop. The Anapra sandstone is the largest outcrop of dinosaur fossils, dinosaur tracks for over 400 miles. And so here we have Olivia, Katie, and Cam, each with a hand in a toe hole for in a dinosaur track. To the right is the dinosaur's toenail, or the devil's toenails. This being passed around is just a clipping of the toenail. But so the exogyra fossil is a large oyster that is like coiled around to look like some nasty toenails. And so they've been nicknamed. But they're found in the Del Rio Formation, and so we saw those the same day. Pictured here some of your favorite geowallies sitting next to or posing at the Great Unconformity. The Great Unconformity is a portion of the rocks in El Paso that's missing 500 million years in the geologic timeline. So it's the red bluff granite intruded, and then over a series of erosional events, 500 million years, it was eroded and eroded down before the non-conformable deposition of the Bliss sandstone. This is actually very similar to the Great Unconformity that we have here in Virginia. The overlying rock there is a bliss sandstone. Here we have the Antietam, and they're actually almost the same. Both are sandstones featuring siliceous tubes. Ours are a little better. But, this is like a really incredible outcrop that or road cut, even that we saw, that we made a stop at. And it looks a lot messier than the original image I had up a few minutes ago. So you see that the geology here has been greatly like deformed by the volcanic and the intrusional activity in the area. So we see these granites and the basalts that have altered the location of the Kastner Formation, for example. Here I want to point out the pegmatite in the Red Bluff granite. That's being passed around now. Pegmatites are like the very last bit of magma left to cool. And so sometimes they have like unique minerals in them and larger grains. Being passed around is a portion of this. It's missing the like unique mineral called lepidolite. It's this like pink to purple, like bright mica. But if you find it in there, let me know, because I really wanted a sample of it, but I couldn't find it. But it is in the rock. And big shout out to our tour guide, Josh Villalobos, for the geologic tour of the area. That's the class. The following day, we moved on to our like trek to Big Bend National Park. Mapped here is the greater Van Horn area. And I want to point out the thrust faults and the normal faulting all along the northern section of the map, because they help to play a role in the formation of the talc at the talc mine near Van Horn. So this is the second largest producer of talc in the United States. It actually has a sedimentary protolith rather than an ultramafic one. So this is a dolomite sourced talc. And so this carbonate rock was like doused in this hydrothermal fluid, a low temperature silica rich fluid, altering its composition and its mineral structure, forming this like dark gray talc, which is very different than one that you'd see or like have products made from like makeup or other powders. This is instead used for ceramics and tiles. Thanks to our man's pen file for the talc. This is an image of the talc mine, which has been active for like 30 years. So very incredible.
All right, so we've come from El Paso, we're moving down to Van Horn, and here are our two little minivans that we took driving down to Big Bend National Park. Here's a geologic map of the park. As you can see, there's a ton going on, lots of different rock types. This map was made in 1966, so there have been some changes, but yeah, we're gonna get into all the rocks. So how was Big Bend formed? So about 500 million years ago, Big Bend was covered in the deep sea. And then time goes on, and 300 million years ago, the Ouachita orogeny occurred, which is when parts of Africa, South America, and North America all collided, running into each other, causing this mountain building event. So that was 300 million years ago. So the mountains have been formed, and then rifting occurs during like the tertiary, and that's how the sunken block was formed, which is kind of like the nickname for Big Bend. It's a graben. Again, a graben is just like this lower level of the Earth's crust that has dropped down due to faulting. So in Big Bend, it's normal faults. And then right up here, we just have all the formations. We looked through examples during class, made sure we knew what we were talking about, but we're going to discuss like each of these as we go on through the week. And just for like the environments of the times that like Bocceus or like the Buda was in, we start with the Paleozoic. We have the interior floodplain. So again, like that ocean, we've got a lot of limestone. We have fossils coming. We've got the coastal floodplain coming up, and then volcanics happen later. This is the window. So our lodge was like, picture it right here, and you go out your back porch and you see this beautiful view. It's called the window because when the sun rises, it like comes up between the two mountains. It's just very beautiful. And these are the Chisos Mountains. Okay, so day 3, this is our first look at Big Bend geology and topography. So we went on the Lost Mine Trail. That's like the first major thing we did. We saw breccias, tuffs, and we just like hiked this trail trying to get the lay of the land. Later on in the afternoon, we went on the Grapevine Hills Trail. This picture up here, you can see that huge like rounded rock. It's kind of sitting on 2 other rocks. You can't see super well because of the picture, but it's been weathered like that, and it's just like sitting up there, and it's gigantic. Like the picture doesn't do it justice, but it's because the corners and edges of the rock weather faster, so the faces stay, and it just slowly becomes rounded over time. And then also that day, we went to a fossil exhibit. Most of the fossils are found in the Blackfeet and Javelina formations, and Big Bend is actually known for its fossils. There's like over 1,200 different kinds that have been found there. So it was really cool to go and see that.
Our 4th day on the trip, we started out by visiting these rhyolitic dikes that they are like orangish in color, and so their fins, they're nicknamed the fins of fire. They kind of resemble like goldfish fins poking across the land. So that was really cool. They are really interesting because they have high quartz in them, which is like the more like rod-like pointy hexagonal quartz that we all wish that we could see more in our geology, but we were able to see it here in the field. Well, it was originally high quartz weathering, not so much anymore. Next, we went on to the Santa Elena Canyon. This is entirely limestone. At the very top of the canyon is the Santa Elena Formation. This is a cliff forming formation. Following that was a slope forming layer, and then a cliff forming, and then slope forming, pretty much all the way down. And it's entirely limestone. It was incised by the Rio Grande, so we're standing in front of the Rio Grande there. Later that day, we visited Tuff Canyon. Tuff Canyon is like some of the youngest rocks present in the park. It's entirely made of, or mostly made from pyroclastic flows. We are all standing within the canyon. It was incised by Blue Creek. I thought the coolest part of this portion of the trip was seeing the pillow basalts, which I'm covering. The pillow basalts and the brecciation in the basaltic flows. This is like a key indicator that these rocks actually formed underwater. And so that was like almost mind blowing. I was like, yeah, so that was really cool to see the way that the environment connects there. Our 5th day was like the jam-packed day. So we started out in the Aguja Formation, doing some fossil digs. There was a variety of rock of fossil types, but we found shark teeth, and then a variety of sized bivalves. Ronnie is here in this picture holding like a probably 10 to 12 centimeter long bivalve, like a boss. We were only here for like 20 to 30 minutes, but we got a really good handle on the depositional environment of the Aguja, starting as like a deltaic environment, and then moving more so as to like floodplain. Later in the day, we spent the afternoon in Mexico. We had the privilege of being able to cross via the Bocceus ferry, which is this rowboat. But we had a great time having lunch and getting to speak with some of the locals, talking about Big Bend National Park, tourism, and the important role that tourists play in their economy, how difficult their time was during COVID without that, and just what life is like for them, and great food. Great food. Our next stop was Ernst Tanaja. Ernst Tanaja is nicknamed Dat Contact because we have a very clear contact, an unconformable contact between the overlying layered Bocceus formation that's has really strong layering, but then also tilting, as you can see us all taking a nap on the bedding. And then the underlying massive Buda formation, both of which are limestones, but incredible contact there. And we ended the day at Bocceus Hot Spring. This was formed by faulting over 20 million years ago. More recently, now decrepit building was put around the hot spring to kind of enclose the warm waters and create a bathhouse. Now it's a little more demolished, but we've got really nice benches to sit in while you enjoy it. This water is warmed by warmer rocks deep beneath the surface. The lower density brings the rocks up, or the water up to the hot spring and kind of empties it into the much colder Rio Grande. So it's kind of fun to jump back and forth from one to the other.
Yeah.
And experience the changes there. Our sixth day, we actually spent majority of it outside of the park. So we drove up to Marathon, Texas to visit the Bocceus novaculite. Novaculite has a chert protolith, which is biogenic in nature. And then we moved on to the Hayman Formation, which is these seen here. It's a series of turbidite sequences, so alternating shales and sandstones. As you can see, it's a little curved at the top, and that has to do with the gravitational forces creeping down and pulling the surface land closer to the ground. So that was really cool to see, especially in an outcrop like this. You're just driving through and you look to your left and you see this massive just wall of tilted rocks, completely vertical. We ended the day doing the window hike, so it was about 2.5 miles, but a nice way to end the day with everyone.
Okay, so day 7, we kind of had to drive. We spent a lot of time in the vans driving to each of these places because Big Bend National Park is huge and everything's pretty spread apart. But the top picture, those are iron concretions. They're compact cemented mass, and they form from mineralization like of iron, and it precipitates into a little ball in the center, and then more layers are added. This commonly happens in like sedimentary rocks, but we found these like in the Bocceus Formation. They're really cool. There were like really small ones and then bigger ones that you could like sit on like a chair. It was super fun. And then we also saw this, which is a petroglyph. So different from a hieroglyphic, that's like a language. These are just like carvings or symbols. They can be like painted on, or they can be carved into like desert varnish, which is like a layer of bacteria that builds on the outside of rocks. People suspect it's a buffalo. We don't really know, and we don't know how old it is either. But we felt like really, really honored that we were able to go here because a month before, some people had like defaced one of the petroglyphs in the park that was like over 5,000 years old, and they just like wrote their names on it. So the location's top secret, but it was really fun to go see that piece of history. Day 8 was like mapping day. We spent like 6 to 7 hours out in Dagger Flats. So this is where our cabins were, and we went up to Dagger Flats, this huge like open space with lots of mountains and hills. We were given a clipboard, GPS, and like a map to fill in where we were. And this really just helped us practice like using UTM, which is Universal Transverse Mercator, which just helps you like plot where you are on a map. And we took like strike and dip measurements using a Breton, and we were looking for like fault lines that you can see through mineralization. So this was just like really, really good practice. They just sent us out into groups for like 5 hours. It was awesome. And we colored the map in based on the formations we saw here. You can see we put them up with Band-Aids. Had to be resourceful. But this is the one that Doc and Linda had, and they've used like for past trips. So you can see we just did like a smaller section of the grid. But I just thought it was awesome how similar they all turned out, and it was a lot of fun. And then also while we were out there, I was in a group with Belle and Cam, and I think 10 minutes into like exploring, we just found this guy who we have named Phillip. This I found on the internet, and we were thinking like maybe it could be a javelina, which those are found in Big Bend very often. They're really aggressive pigs. Thankfully, we didn't run into any, but we did see some tracks. But Phillip ate lunch with us, so that was cool. We just carried him around all day. But some other animals that we could have anticipated seeing while in Big Bend are bears, mountain lions, like foxes, and I think some people saw like a deer antelope looking thing. So pretty cool. This is Willow Mountain. It's a rhyolitic laccolith that was formed about like 40 million years ago. And this is a great example of columnar jointing. So they're vertical right now, but you can see the like hexagonal shape at the top. And that's just like how they naturally, like the lava cools. So this is a really good example.
And our last day in the park, we were able to relax, or maybe it was more strenuous. It was like a 13-mile hike where we got to kind of close out our trip all together. So these are some pictures from the trip or from the hike. Way out in the distance here is Mexico, and but the majority of it is all Big Bend.
We thought we would end just highlighting some fun pictures throughout the trip. So you can see here, that's Johnny, Belle, and Kathleen in front of the Rio Grande at Santa Elena Canyon. This is a picture of Matt and Stu that he got from a stranger. You can ask him more about that later.
It was really good.
Classic picture.
Pictured here is Jovi, Ronnie, and Rachel on the Lost Mine Trail right on the first day. To contrast that, we have a picture on the right of Zach Price, a beautiful selfie after the 13-mile hike on the last day.
I think that was with Ronnie's phone too.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Sounds perfect.
We have Chloe featured here. She was our wonderful TA that came with us, kept us all in line, and we had a lot of fun getting to know her over the trip. That's me in front of the Starlight Theater where we ate dinner sometimes. I just have a lot of grandpa shirts.
Pictured here, Kara, we got, some of us got to ride donkeys or burras when we got over to Mexico. So Kara's riding a donkey there. And then to the right, Lex is measuring the Bocceus formations strike and dip with a Brunton compass interlingua.
And then we have Quincy, Johnny, Olivia, and Cam also in front of the Starlight Theater. The locals there made sure we watched the sunset. This one guy was really adamant about it, but he was right. It was beautiful. And then Katie, this is near the lodge, and she's in front of the Chisos Mountains. It was a solid trip. And to end, Linda and Doc, thank you so much for taking us. It was so much fun. You've taught us so much throughout the trip and our years being here, and we're just really grateful for the both of you.
Yeah, special shout out to Doc Otis himself. Brent, no, this was your last trip, so we hope that it was a good one. You saved the best for last, of course. Much love. And to kind of close out, this was just one of the 310 trips, so I hope that this either like gets you excited for one that you may have in the future, or just excited to get outside again come the warmer weather. But yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Well, we were out to dinner one night and we're sitting at the table and this stranger comes up to Doc and goes, "Are you Larry?" And Doc is just sitting there like, "No." And that's it.
So that's a new one to add to your list.
Another nickname. Any questions?
What's your favorite part of the trip?
My favorite part. I really liked the day we went mapping. I had a solid group. We spent a lot of time together, and I feel like I really mastered like striking depth and like mapping. So that was really good.
My favorite part, I actually don't think is pictured here, but it was the day that it was in our jam-packed day. We also visited the Bocceus Canyon prior to Bocceus crossing, and some of us climbed into a little cavern, and it was probably the most terrifying part of the trip, but we all helped each other out, and it was very safe to descend. But definitely something I'll remember for a long time.
If you could redo the trip and like focus particularly on like another field of geology that like you didn't really touch in this trip, do you have like any ideas of what might be the most interesting and like the context of that?
Well, I think a lot of it was like structural geology, I think. But like Johnny touched on in the beginning, when we were in El Paso, it was really cool to hear about the bolsons, which are like aquifers, basically, like supported the like all of the people surrounding it. To be really cool to like look at it from a hydrology standpoint. I don't know what that would be like in Big Bend, but yeah.
So Linda has a question. Talking about water, what's a tanaja?
I believe a tanaja is, well, okay, so these watering holes are the tanajas. Tanaja roughly translates to like vase. And so these watering holes, we saw similar things throughout the trip, but they're over time, the limestone is weathered down, and once like a pit is formed, the water can like swirl around, and like pebbles and cobbles can carve out this like hole. And so this is tens of feet deep, and don't fall in, but you can just like lean over and not see the bottom.
Thanks.
Rowan, you have a question?
Yeah, so you guys are visiting right on the border with Mexico. Of course, there's been a lot of reporting of immigration and issues with immigration, border wall, that sort of thing. Did you guys discuss that while you were down there, either with each other in the class or with locals?
Yeah, so well, prior to going out there, we had a guest speaker come in and discuss kind of like the sociological and like the community aspect and like the impacts of the immigration in the area. Big Bend is located in an area where that is not common as much. It's one of the least like trafficked regions of the border. However, El Paso is very different. There are a few like bridges that cross over the Rio Grande right there, most of which are like hours of waiting to cross over, but that doesn't mean that people don't cross over where the bridges aren't, and some of that is for reasons relating to employment, when there are better opportunities for like education and employment in El Paso rather than Ciudad Juarez, that is common. However, it's a community that is it is like okay almost.
I think they're very accepting of
Yeah.
people. Josh, who was a professor at University of Texas El Paso, he was kind of our tour guide when we were in El Paso. The trail we took to see the dinosaur tracks, we actually passed by a camera that was hidden in a bush, I guess for Border Patrol to like keep an eye out in that area. And we also saw like clothes, and like Josh said, there's a lot of like plastic bottles that are left there just because people are shedding layers, and like if they have access to it, drinking water as they are passing. So yeah.
He said that they usually like change clothes behind rocks over there before they cross over for their jobs or I guess.
What was the 13-mile hike like? It was great.
Oh, yes. Do I have? Okay, so this is the window. We were going on the opposite direction of the on the South Rim Trail. It was all working our way up to like the top of these rhyolite intrusions. It was actually kind of alternating like super steep and then like leveling off, but it felt like you were not in Texas anymore. We should have put other pictures from the trip up, but like there were grasses and there were trees and we were walking, we were like, we're not here, we're actually back home, or we're in the Appalachians because of the rock, the trees and the plant life there. And so it didn't actually even feel like it was home or it was Texas anymore. It was incredible. But then we got to the top and you could see everything forever.
Called the South Rim Trail, the South Rim. It is the iconic.
Any more questions from folks?
Yeah, sure, I'll be glad to do that, Ron. I'm Doug. So, later this year, and then we'll turn it next year, it'll be 2023, won't it? In January of 2023, we're gonna run the rock music Oman trip, which goes to Oman, and we look at rocks and we listen to music and think about that. We have some veterans of the trip that are here. And then in the spring semester, at the end of the term, we're gonna do a 310 trip to the American West and Colorado Plateau, probably Grand Canyon. So there'll be two opportunities for field study away from William and Mary in 2023.
These are both called 300 trips, so be on the lookout and be thinking about it. And the department has a lot of financial aid from generous alums to help fund these trips. So if you're interested in either of those trips, go ahead and ask Chuck. I'll be happy to tell you more. Right, Chuck?
That's correct, bro.
And I will say, I didn't know a ton of people going into this trip, but after I left, it felt like I had like, what, 19 new best friends. Like it was so much fun. You get really close with your group. So I definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Allison, I'm here with the deer you saw. Deer, antelope, you saw, like, from the forest.